Hello everybody and welcome to Storytime with me, Miss Anna. Lovely to have you all here. Today's story is extra special because the two ladies that brought us this amazing story is from the UAE. Yeah, they live here. Julia Johnson is our author and Maitha Khayat is our illustrator of this very special book called Aisha's Pearl. Everybody can see? Awesome. Look what I found, cried Aisha, running into the house. She held out her hand. Her fingers were curled round something small. Guess, she told her brother Abdullah, who was building a space station. A feather, he said, without looking. Aisha shook her head. Guess, she told her sister Moza, who was playing on her tablet. A leaf, she said, without looking. Aisha shook her head. Guess, she told her mother, who was baking bread. A shell, she said, without looking. Aisha shook her head. The little girl wandered away to her secret place under the table, and that was where her grandfather found her. I've been looking for you, he told her. Aisha smiled and crawled out from beneath the table. She held out a small closed fist. Guess, she told him. Give me a clue, he said grandfather. Aisha thought for a moment. It's round and smooth. A pebble? Grandfather guessed. More special, she said, and shiny. Marble, grandfather said. Aisha shook her head. It's white, she told him. Round and smooth, white and shiny, and special? What could it be? Grandfather closed his eyes to think. Look at him. Aisha thought he'd fallen asleep. She tapped him gently. Look, she said, and opened her hand. A beautiful, round, smooth, white and shiny pearl lay on her hand. Goodness me, grandfather exclaimed. This is very special indeed. Where did you find it? Asked grandfather. Inside a shell, Aisha told him, in a rock pool. She felt in her pocket for the shell. There it is. Lucky you, grandfather said. Pearls are difficult to find nowadays. An oyster would have lived in this shell, he told her. Have you ever seen one? Aisha shook her head. An oyster is soft, Grandfather said, and if a grain of sand gets into its shell and tickles it, the oyster makes a pearl around it. The longer it stays in the shell, the bigger the pearl grows. The bigger the pearl grows. How long was my pearl inside the shell? Aisha asked. A few years, I should think. It's quite big and it's a beautiful colour, Grandfather said. I think you found a treasure. A pearl diver would have been very happy. Long ago, he told her, before the discovery of oil, the men who lived here in the Arabian Gulf would go out to sea to dive for pearls. It was a tough life, full of hardship and danger. Why? Aisha asked. Her father loved to go diving. He wore a wetsuit, a mask and flippers. Grandfather smiled. He took his sketchbook down from the shelf. I wonder what he's going to show Aisha now. Oh, wow, look at this. Her granddad is an artist. Look at that. There was no fancy equipment, he told her. Just a peg on your nose and a heavy stone and a rope to take you down to the seabed as fast as possible. No tank of air to breathe underwater. A pearl diver had to hold his breath while he collected the oyster shells. When he couldn't hold it any longer, he tugged on a rope to tell his partner on the deck to pull him up. Have you been pearl diving? Aisha asked. Grandfather shook his head. No, but my father went to sea and dived for pearls. Sometimes he'd tell me stories about those days. Please, will you tell me one, Grandfather? Aisha asked. The old man stroked his chin. Let's see, he said. Well, once some of the divers found an old wreck lying on the seabed, but they didn't know that a huge shark lived in it. It surprised them and chased them. Did they get away? Aisha asked anxiously. Grandfather nodded, but not before the shark sank its teeth into a diver's leg. My goodness, and look, Grandad even drew pictures of it. Oh, that is dangerous. Aisha gasped. And then my father punched it on the nose, and the shark let go. But things didn't always end well. Sometimes divers ran out of breath. They were burned by the sun and they felt dizzy and sick. And they didn't have enough water to drink. Sea urchins and rays could give them nasty stings, but they wore cotton suits to protect them when jellyfish were around. So that's why Grandad said it wasn't easy. It was a lot of hardship and dangerous because of all those things. There were good times too, Grandfather told her. The men helped each other. They lived together like brothers. They slept under the stars and sang songs and shared stories. Grandfather smiled. Sometimes the Nahuda, the captain, rewarded a diver who found a really special pearl. And when Allah answered their prayers, they went back to their families at the end of the season and had a big feast to celebrate their safe return. Did your mother go pearl diving as well? Aisha asked. Grandfather chuckled. A pearling some book was no place for a woman, he said. Besides, she had more than enough work to do at home. Aisha wasn't so sure. She thought she would have made a very good pearl diver. She could see herself diving deeper than anyone else and bringing up the very best pearl of all. When Grandfather went for his nap, Aisha had an idea. First, she had to find a few things. A rock from the garden, some rope from Papa's shed, a clothes peg from the laundry room, and her mother's shiny blue tablecloth. A big cardboard box caught her eye. It was perfect. She dragged everything into her secret place under the table. What is she doing? She's got a really good imagination. Well done, Aisha. Oh, look at this. Soon the tablecloth became the sea and the box a boat. Aisha hid the shell with the pearl inside it amongst the creases in the blue tablecloth. She sat inside the box and put the peg on her nose. She tied the rope round the rock and jumped overboard into the sea of blue tablecloth. Holding her breath, she swam amongst imaginary fishes, avoiding sharp rocks and giant clams and the fiery tails of rays. She gathered oyster shells from the seabed, and when she couldn't hold her breath any longer, she swam to the surface and climbed back into her boat. She opened the shell, and there was her pearl. She held it up, and she could hear all the divers cheering. She was right. She made an excellent pearl diver. After a few more dives, she felt sleepy. She curled up inside her boat with the pearl clutched in her hand and closed her eyes just for a little nap. soon she was fast asleep. She didn't hear her mother calling her name. She didn't hear her sister Mosa, and she didn't hear her brother Abdullah. "I know where she will be," said Grandfather. He knows her special place. When Aisha woke up, she found 4 pairs of eyes looking at her. "We've been worried," said her mother. "We've been calling you," said Abdullah. "We couldn't find you," said Mosa. But Grandfather smiled. "Did you have a good trip?" he asked. Aisha nodded. She held out her hand and uncurled her fingers. "Look!" she cried. "Look what I found." The end. And here you can see our lovely author Julia Johnson and Maitha Khayat, our illustrator. Thank you so much for listening to this very special story. I really hope you enjoyed it and you learned a little bit more about the Gulf, the UAE. Have a lovely week. I'll see you next time. Bye.